Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we continue our study of the first book of Chronicles. We are about to read chapter 19 together. Um, we have learned that in the last chapter 18, we started to read about the major conquests that David embarked upon to bring to pacify all of these surrounding enemies. We read of his wars against Aram, his alliance with the people of Hamat. We read against his wars against Hadad Ezer, the king of Tzova, and we read how he fought against the Edomites. So this chapter refers to the war of the Ammonites, which were also listed among the nations that David had conquered and subdued, and they became their vassals. So the story of how that came to be is what we're going to read in chapter 19. Vayhi acharei chen, and it was after this, Vayamas Nachash melech bnei Ammon, Nachash, who was the king of the Ammonites, passed away. Vayimloch beno tachtav, and his son became king instead of him. His son's name is Hanun, which we will read about in a second. Vayomer David e'eseh chesed, I am going to do kindness im Hanun ben Achash. It's important to note that David began his relationship on a footing of an alliance in the hope that he can establish an alliance and thus pacify his border with Ammon, which is to the south east of somewhere in Jordan, maybe a little to what's modern Jordan, but to the south east of the nation of where David had Israel. So he said, let me do some kindness, ki asa aviv imi chesed, because I know I already have a relationship with them, a good one, because he did his father Nachash did favors for me, right? When I was running, I sought refuge there. My family sought refuge there. So David already had what he believed to be a good relationship with Nachash. He did not need to be enemies with Ammon. So Vayishlach David malachim lenachamo al aviv. So David sent messengers to give him comfort in mourning over his father, to visit and express their condolences. So Vayavo Avdei David el Eretz b'nei Ammon el Chanun lenachamo. David's servants, his delegation, came to the land of the Ammonites to the new king Hanun, to give him comfort, his condolences. Vayomru sarei b'nei Ammon lechanun, and the officers, the officials of the king of the people of Ammon said to Hanun, their king, Hamachabei David et avicha be'einecha, right? Do you think David is really giving honor to your father, to his relationship with your father? Kishalach lacham menachamim, that therefore he's sending you condolences. Halo ba'avor lachkor v'lahapoch l'ragel haaretz. He's sending them in order to search out our defenses, to check out our land, because David just wants to conquer you. This is not a genuine delegation of peace and condolences. This is a delegation of spies. That's why that's why his servants are coming to you. So Hanun very unwisely listened to his suspicious advisors. Vayikach Hanun et avdei David vayigalchem. So he took them, he shaved their hair, shaved their beards, which and then was a very embarrassing thing to do to someone. Vayichroses madvehem, and he cut their robes, their cloaks. Bachatzi ad hamifsha'a vayishalchem, so that they were partially exposed. Their private parts, their buttocks were privately exposed, and sent them home in thus very humiliated manner. So he really treated David's delegation, which was a government to government delegation of peace, and he sent them home quite embarrassed and humiliated. Vayelchu vayagidu David, and when they, in other words, people came and told David regarding Al Hanashim, regarding those men, Vayishlach likrasam, and he sent messengers to bring them into his court so that they can give him a report. Ki hayu hanashim nichlamim miod. They were very embarrassed. They were very ashamed. They did not want to appear in front of King David in this condition. Vayomer hamelach shavu v'reicho. you know what? Stay in Jericho. Remember, Jericho was the place where they would go to and then cross the River Jordan in towards Ammon. Um, so just stay in Jericho ad asher yitzamach zikanchem v'shavtem until your beards grow back, until your hair grows back. Presumably, they got new clothing, and stay there so you don't have to appear to me in this condition. Vayiru b'nei Ammon ki hisbashu im David. The people of Ammon realized, they saw, they recognized that they had created hatred between them and David. They realized, uh-oh, we just made a big boo-boo. And they created an enemy where they didn't need to. But here they are in a state of enmity with David. Vayishlach Chanun uvnei Ammon. So Chanun, the king of Ammon, realized that he could not stand up to David's army by himself. So he and his people sent messengers in order to obtain help from their neighbors. Elef kikar kesef, 1,000 talents of silver, liskar lahem, to hire mercenaries, right? Min Aram Naharayim, right, which is much farther north, Umin Aram, Ma'acha, Umitzova. So these are areas up in Syria and in what's today southern Turkey, right? These are areas which David had previously subdued, but there were many of them that were sufficiently upset and angry with David. So they assumed this would be a good place for them to get support from. Rechavu Farashim, to hire riders and chariots to come down and help them in their what they knew was about to be a war with David. And they managed to hire 32,000 riders, or chariots, and they hired the king of Ma'acha and his nation, his people, Vayavo, and they all came. And they camped before the place called Medava. Ammon and the people of Ammon themselves, they gathered as many as they could from their towns, and they got ready for war with David. Vayishma David, and David heard that the Ammonites were preparing for war, so Vayishlach Yoav v'et kol tzava hagiborim, and he sent his general Yoav and his entire army, all of his fighters, to engage in battle the people of Ammon and the mercenaries that they had hired from Aram. Vayetzu b'nei Ammon, the people of Ammon went out, Vayarchu milchama pesachir, and they set up their camp to engage in battle at the entranceway to the city, the main city of Ammon. And the other nations, the other kings that had come on their own, in other words, they were out in the field. So there was a camp guarding the city, and then there was a camp out in the field, which consisted, the one out on the field seems to have consisted of mostly these mercenaries. So Vayar Yoav ki panim v'yachar. When they had set up these two camps, Yoav realized that he was surrounded. He had come to the city and he encountered the city blocked by its defenders. And behind him, out in the field, out in the outside the city, behind him were the mercenaries. So he realized he was surrounded front and back. So Vayivchar mikol bachur b'Yisrael, he chose his top soldiers, the chosen ones of the Israelite soldiers, Vayaroch likrat Aram, and he set up to fight against Aram. It's interesting, he chose to fight the mercenaries first. Now, obviously, I can't read Yoav's mind, but it seems that he would have engaged them first. They had a lot less stake here. They're just paid soldiers. Aram, remember, had already suffered a defeat in the hands of David, so their morale might not be quite as high. Whereas engaging the people guarding the city, or are guarding their own city, who have literally their lives, their families, their businesses, their town, and everything at stake, would probably fight much harder. So he set himself against the mercenaries first. And the rest, in other words, he took his own shock troops, his own elite troops to attack the mercenaries first. And the rest of the armies that with him, he gave Biad Avshai Achiv. He told Avshai, or Avishai, his brother, Vayarchu Likrat Bnei Ammon, and they prepared to set battle against the people of Ammon who were protecting the city. Vayomer, and he said to him before the battle starts, Im techzak mimeni Aram, if the people of Aram will overpower me, then you focus on defending me. Then b'nei Ammon yachzugu mimcha. But and if the people of Ammon overpower you, v'hoshaticha, I will come to your aid. So we can both come to each other's aid if one of the battles is going not in either one of our favors. If they both are going down, then obviously they're lost, which we see reflected in this next verse 13. Chazek v'nischasko ba'aramenu, be strong and let's strengthen ourselves and encourage ourselves on behalf of our nation, uvi'adore Eloheinu, and on behalf of the cities of our God, right? V'Adonai, and God, hatov be'einav yaseh, God will do what is good in his eyes. In other words, he realized that his whole plan relied upon at least one of the sides winning the battle, right? If they both were to lose and be subdued, then they'd be sandwiched between these two armies and they'd be lost. So, as Yoav had planned, Vayigash Yoav v'yam asher imo lifnei Aram lemilchama, Yoav did approach and together with his soldiers, they approached Aram in war, Vayanusim mipanav, and his strategy worked. The mercenaries ran from before him. They freaked out. They all ran and retreated. And Yoav won Ubnei Ammon Ra'u. And as soon as the people of Ammon saw that their help that came, Kinas Aram, that the Arameans had ran, they themselves also ran Mipnei Abshai Achiv, from before Avishai, his brother, who was leading the rest of the soldiers, Vayavo'u Ha'ira, and he entered the city, the capital of Ammon, Vayavo Yoav Yerushalayim, and Yoav was able to return back to Jerusalem victorious. Vayar Aram ki nigfu lifnei Yisrael. Aram saw that they had been struck down. Remember, Aram that had been subdued already, but now had rebelled again. Now they realized that they were really lost. Vayishluhu malachim vayotziu et Aram asher me'ever hanar. So they decided to continue the fight. They didn't see any hope in making peace anymore. So they went to the Arameans that were farther out. The people of Aram that David had conquered were up to the river of Euphrates. So they went across the river Euphrates and brought Arameans that were farther to the east. They brought them to help in battle. V'shofach sartzvo Hadadezer lifneim. Remember Hadadezer, who had been conquered by David before, his general had apparently moved across the river to the east and led a new force of Arameans to come and confront David again. So now David is confronting a new force. He subdued the Ammonites, but the Arameans who had come to help the Ammonites, who had lost, are now assembling a new force to confront David again. So it's verse 17, Vayugadlu David, and it was told to David, he heard the news that a new force was now arrayed against him, Vayesofes Kol Yisrael, and he gathered all of the soldiers of Israel, Vayavor Hayarden, and he crossed the Jordan River, Vayavo Aleim, and he attacked. So he didn't wait for them to assemble an attack against him. He did a preemptive attack, Vayaroch Aleim, and he established the battle lines confronting them. And David went to confront the Arameans in battle, and they waged a battle. And the battle turned in David's favor. The Arameans, this new group of Arameans, ran from before the people of Israel. And he killed 7,000 riders, and 40,000 foot soldiers. V'et Shofach, Sarat Sava, and Shofach, who was Hadad-ezer's general, he killed in battle. Vayarav de Hadad-ezer ki nigfu livnei Yisrael, and the servants of Hadad-ezer saw that hope was lost, this was over, they had been struck down again, and now for the third time before the people of Israel. So finally, Vayashlimu im David Vayavdu, they finally made peace with David, and they became his vassal kingdom. They subdued themselves before him. Below avo Aram Hoshiat Bnei Ammon Od, the Arameans no longer decided to come and help out the Ammonites. So now we have the victory against Ammon, but more importantly, for this chapter, the victory against Aram and subduing them as a kingdom, which was a serious threat along the border of Israel, finally removed and finally subdued. the Ammonites are not yet completely subdued. We're going to read a little bit more about that in chapter 20, as David continues to secure the borders and build up the strength of the nation of Israel. So this was chapter 19. Thank you so much for studying chapter 19 together. Looking forward to studying chapter 20 and, of course, the entire book of Chronicles together. Have a wonderful day.